There's a silent killer on the loose. According to the World Bank, air pollution kills 20,000 people every year in South Africa. That's just one of many scary studies. The costs of hospital visits, deaths, loss of employment, and chronic long-term air pollution-related illnesses are high. Estimated from the hundreds of millions to the tens of billions. A lot of pollution in and around Gauteng, a lot of it due to coal burning. In 2007, government promised to clean up the air to force better compliance. In 2007, nothing had changed. In fact, the Department of Environmental Affairs admits that many South Africans are breathing air that is harmful to their well-being. We've decided to ask those at the coalface of the matter to join us. David van Wyk, lead researcher at the Benchmarks Foundation, with me in the studio. Bobby Peake from GroundWork, a non-profit environmental justice organization, is joining us from our Durban studios, and Dr. Thuli Khumalo from the Department of Environmental Affairs is joining us from Cape Town. A very warm welcome to all of you. Dr. Thuli Khumalo, why is this happening?
Good evening. We do have high levels of air pollution still in the Vaal Triangle priority area, because we have many sources that are contributing to the problem.
Okay, but Sasol and Eskom are in the spotlight here when it comes to pollution. They are the worst polluters in South Africa, and there are many other pockets. So I'm just wondering why today it is still so bad at these levels.
I must say that we are monitoring air quality in the Vaal since 2007 and other parts of the country. We do see small improvements in the quality of air, not satisfactory, because for us what we want is compliance with the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. So we still have those big polluters as you indicate, but we do have more significant sources which are at breathing zone, like human activities, car, vehicle emissions, domestic burning of dirty fuels. We are also seeing an increase on the burning of waste that is not collected at the municipalities, which also adds to the problem.
How do you force them to comply?
We have an atmospheric emission licensing system, which is a permitting system for big industries. We have a legislation called minimum emission standards. So the licenses that are issued have limits and permissible amounts, and those industries have to emit according to those permissible amounts that are in their licenses. So that is how when we enforce compliance, we look at those.
David van Wyk, I mean, it's not working, is it?
It's not working.
No.
No, it's not. Mainly because the law allows for exceptions and postponements, and the department allows for rolling postponements for Sasol and Eskom.
Why? What's their justification?
Well, basically, Sasol says that it must still get the necessary technology to clean up their act, and they will only have it by 2023. By 2023, it won't be there, and then there will be another postponement and so on. Because, you know, the issue of air quality is secondary. Environmental responsibility comes right at the bottom of the pile when it comes to making a profit by Sasol, and also, of course, Eskom has got huge financial problems, and so environmental concerns will be very low. Also, the monitoring stations throughout the Vaal Triangle area, you know, out of 25, I think last time we checked there was 9 of them that was working, you know, so the monitoring stations themselves are not functioning properly. We've got community monitors on the ground that tell us whether there are report backs to the community and so on about these things, and they're simply not happening. The other thing is that the World Health Organization limits are much stricter than the South African limits, and even when you compare the two sets of limits, these industries, together with the mineral processing plants, do not meet the emission standards that are set for them. You know, and so every year when we get reports about these things, then we hear about exemptions from the law, and we hear about postponements in terms of applying the law.
Bobby Peake, what is your experience, and what are you seeing from a community point of view, the impact on communities affected by this?
Well, our experience with Sasol in particular is very long. We took the first air sample as GroundWork. We took the first air sample outside the Sasol facility in Sasolburg in 2000, and we proved to Sasol that they were lying about their pollution. And Sasol is still lying, by the way. They won't release the information on the pollution. We've asked them in 2006, we asked them in 2017, and they say they're a responsible citizen. They are part of the United Nations Global Compact. They adhere to and they are fighting for the Sustainable Development Goals, but they won't release their information and their pollution information. So we've taken our own samples, we've proved that the air is polluted, and we've gone to government, and Sasol has known since 2004 when we were in Parliament, when they first lobbied against the Air Quality Act and against standards. And standards, when we talk about standards, we're talking about speeding limits for pollution. So let's, for instance, say the speeding limit is 120 kilometers an hour. Sasol is probably going 240 kilometers an hour. And what they are trying to do with the minimum emission standards, they are trying, with Eskom, they are trying to get government to make an illegal activity legal. And sadly, the Department of Environmental Affairs is just caving in. And just recently, the Department of Environmental Affairs has said.
Okay, let me just ask you about the impact on human beings. I mean, I grew up in Sasolburg, and often we were sent home from school because you couldn't even see the school, people couldn't breathe, and everybody of my generation suffer from really bad chest sinus, I mean, really bad problems. So I'm just wondering what can be done about those victims, and what sort of medical access do they have?
A very important question, Jane, and I think it's important that this is not only the Department of Environmental Affairs' problem. This is Cyril Ramaphosa, our president's problem. And Mr. Ramaphosa needs to get the Department of Health, and we are working with the Department of Health as GroundWork, to be able to get them involved in the debate on pollution, so that they, when they are treating the patients in the area, they can understand how to treat the patients. But critically, Sasol as an industry is a dying industry. Sasol as an industry is also a climate denialist. We know, and the science has told us, if we want to meet climate change, and if we, importantly, want to keep our communities healthy, and we want to have an economy and a country that has healthy people, you know, the Secunda plant, for instance, has to close by 2050 at least. So Sasol is facing a dilemma. And, you know, as David has said, they're just kicking this ball down the road.
Okay, let
so
me
there
ask,
has to be some
Dr.
urgent
Thuli
interaction with Sasol.
Dr. Khumalo, I mean, listening to that, and I'm sure you are aware of the impact that it's having on hundreds of thousands of people. I mean, what are the conversations that you're having with communities? And, I mean, I should imagine there should be a fear of some sort of class action.
Perhaps, Jen, I start with providing clarity on the legislation. The World Health Organization provides guidelines for countries to adopt. We in South Africa have adopted them, taking into account local conditions, and we have what is called standards, National Ambient Air Quality Standards.
Sorry, but can I just jump in here? I mean, we just heard that
Sasol
Sasol there is very reluctant in releasing the sort of information that's required to make these sort of judgments.
We have information, we require information, and we get it from industry. The postponements, it must be clear, there are once-off, no more postponements after 2025. So and these are transitional arrangements. The legislation was published and came into force in 2010. These plans were built in the 50s and 60s. They have been given time to come into compliance latest 2025, and that's what the postponements are about. Other plans that are not going to come into compliance are going to be retired by 2030.
Okay. David van Dijk, I mean, is that enough? What is it that you would like to see going forward in order to ensure people's safety and the fact that people are no longer dying from the air that we breathe every day?
Well, I think that there's a chemical warfare taking place against the population of South Africa. If you consider that 20,000 people a year die and it costs us 30 billion rands a year to fix people who are sick. I think that, 14,000 people a year die from road accidents. It's far worse than the situation with regard to road accidents. If you deliberately poison the air of the population, you are committing a crime against them, and you are denying them their constitutional right in terms of Section 24 of the Constitution, which basically says you have a right to a clean and healthy environment and a safe environment. And the government has to guarantee that right. Now, To talk about local conditions in terms of the World Health Organization standards and then very lax standards in South Africa is completely unacceptable, because our conditions is actually much worse, because we have high pressure zones in winter that traps the air down quite close to the ground. So in winter you will find the smog in these coal burning areas to be absolutely terrible. And in some of the low pressure zone comes in and the smog is able to go up. But in winter in particular, it is a really, really bad problem. And you should actually have higher standards than what the World Organization recommends.
Okay, let's leave it there. David van Wyk, Dr. Thuli Khumalo, and Bobby Peake, thank you very much. Now, in the spirit of World Mother Tongue Day, that's today, if you didn't know, we asked some Gautengers to show off their language skills. Many people around the world speak only one language, but South Africans can show off a thing or two when it comes to multilingualism. Slindelo Masikana has the story.
With almost 15 million people in this province, Gauteng is where it's at when you want to say hello, heita, in a confident mother tongue kind of way.
In Portuguese, hello, you say hola.
You can say goeiemôre.
I am Jan Cassis.
Molo.
Molo. What language is that? But that's the easy part, right? Let's try something a little bit more advanced. You know, a midday, see you at the cooler type conversation at work. So tell me, how would I say I had an awesome weekend in Sipet?
I get a fantastische Navia card.
Ek het 'n fantastische naweek gehad.
Impela sonvo yami beyimnanzi.
O meu fim de semana foi perfeito.
Is there not a simpler version?
Yes, there is. You can say o meu fim de semana foi bom.
O meu fim de semana foi bom.
Okay.
Ibimnandi impela viki yami.
Weekend yangu yaifadza.
Weekend yangu yaifadza. So we got you midway through the day in a variety of languages. Let's say goodbye or see you later.
Uhambe kakuhle.
Na usale kakuhle.
Usale kahle maki.
Leshala ngabotse.
Tonana.
Ciao.
Ciao. Totsies. Nginguslindelo wakamasikane eGoli.